betrayed by her sister, abandoned by her mother, framed as mentally ill, and pushed toward losing everything she owns. Jordan has nothing left except the truth. For 7 years, she endured humiliation, isolation, and pain, all to prove one thing: her father's death was no accident. This isn't just a story about revenge, it's about surviving the people who were supposed to love you the most.
My phone buzzed on a Saturday as I was leaving the mall. A text from my husband said he was stuck at work, so I would be eating alone again. I sighed and headed for my car. Suddenly, a woman called out my name. I vaguely remembered her from an old work event. She hurried toward me, a worried look on her face, and pressed an envelope into my hand. You need to see this, she urged, whispering that I should doubt everything about my husband. Inside my car, I opened it, and a cold wave of dread washed over me. Hello, we are glad you are here. If you enjoy our stories, please like and subscribe. Tell us where you are watching from. This story is a work of fiction meant to be dramatic and teach a valuable lesson. Any resemblance to actual people or events is a coincidence, but the message is important. The September sun cast long shadows across the stone walkways of the North Austin Mall. It was a flawless Saturday afternoon. The air was a pleasant 78 degrees, and a light wind carried the sweet scent of jasmine. I shifted my shopping bag to my other hand, thinking about one last stop. Graham's text confirmed I would have dinner by myself. It was something I was used to. As I neared the parking lot, I heard someone call out my full name: Lillian Grant. I turned quickly. A woman in her mid-30s walked toward me. She wore nice slacks and a cream top, looking professional yet approachable. Her dark hair was in a neat ponytail. I felt a faint sense of knowing her, like from a long ago conference. I am Diana Cole, she said with a hesitant smile. We met in Houston at the AIA Texas event in 2018. Your talk on green architecture was fantastic. The memory slowly returned. I pictured the huge ballroom and my nerves about being the newest architect on the panel. Oh my goodness, I said, my smile genuine now. I do remember you. You were in the third row and asked a question about cost. Her own smile widened. You recall that? I asked. It was a really smart question. I adjusted my bag again. So, are you in Austin now? She nodded. I moved here 3 months ago. I'm a forensic accountant, mostly working with law firms. There is plenty of opportunity here. How about you? Still designing incredible houses? I simply said, I do my best. I chuckled softly. My firm is downtown. We design high end homes and some smaller commercial properties. That sounds amazing, Diana said. She glanced at her watch. I know this is forward, but do you have a minute? I see a Starbucks over there. I would love to chat if you are free. I thought for a moment. I barely knew this woman, but she seemed so genuine. Besides, I was in no rush to get home to an empty house. Of course, I replied. I would enjoy that. We sat at a table outside under a green umbrella as our iced coffees began to perspire. Diana started with polite questions about my life in Austin and my marriage. I gave brief answers. I moved here in 2016 for Graham's career. We were married for 8 years. We had no children. We are trying, I said automatically. It was my usual answer. It suggested hope, but covered up my private heartache. Diana gave me a look of sympathy. I'm sure that is not easy. It is what it is, I answered, taking a sip, ready to change the subject. What about you? Are you married? Any kids? Neither, she said, her smile looking a bit strained. My work keeps me very busy, and I have been navigating some, well, let's call them trust issues. A relationship ended badly a while back. I am still working through it. I am sorry to hear that. Do not be. It was a learning experience. She paused, swirling the ice in her drink. Your husband is Graham, right? What is his line of work? He runs an investment fund called Hayes Capital Advisors. It is a small firm focused on real estate. He has had it for years after leaving a bigger company in Dallas. He sounds very driven. He is, I said, smiling, but a knot formed in my stomach. Graham was good at everything. He was good at his job, good at earning trust, and very good at making me trust him. We talked for about 20 more minutes. Diana was a wonderful listener. As we stood to leave, she touched my arm and pulled a plain envelope from her bag. Lillian, she said gently, I believe this belongs to you. I wrestled with whether this was the right thing to do, but if our roles were reversed, I would want to know. I looked at the envelope in her hand. What is this? I asked quietly. Open it when you are alone, she said. Or don't. The choice is yours. She put it into my hand. My number is inside. Call me if you need anything. With that, she turned and walked away. I remained in my car for at least 5 minutes, completely still, before I worked up the nerve to open it. Inside were three photos, printed on flimsy paper. They were grainy, as if taken from a distance and then magnified. The first showed Graham in a restaurant booth with a pretty dark haired woman in her late 20s. She looked sharp and sophisticated. They were laughing, leaning toward each other. Her hand was on the table, almost touching his. The second photo showed Graham with his hand on her lower back, leading her into the Four Seasons Hotel. The last image was a close up with a timestamp September 7th, 2024, at 8:43 p.m., exactly 1 week ago. The very night Graham said he was with a client. My hands started to tremble. I dropped the photos onto the passenger seat, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I picked them up again, my eyes fixed on his dark gray suit, the one I had just collected from the dry cleaner. I recognized his watch, a gift from me for our 5th anniversary. A business card fell out. Deanna Cole, forensic accountant, with a phone number. My mind was reeling. I did not know what to think. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to laugh at the absurd mistake. This had to be a misunderstanding. She was probably a client. Their meeting had to be professional. But the way he was looking at her, my phone buzzed. It was Graham. Going to be late. Do not wait up. Love you. I stared at the screen. Just days ago, a message like that made me feel cherished. Now the words felt completely hollow and rehearsed. I needed to know the truth. But confronting him would just lead to denials. He would have a perfect excuse. I needed proof he could not argue with. My hands shook as I started the engine. The photos lay beside me, face down. For 8 years, I had given him all my trust. For 8 years, I had believed him. Now, for the first time, I questioned it all. Sleep was impossible that night. Graham arrived home just after midnight. I heard the familiar rumble of the garage door, a sound that always meant safety. I followed his movements through the house. His keys on the counter, his shoes by the door, the water running in the bathroom. When he climbed into bed beside me, I feigned sleep. My eyes were shut, my breathing was even, but my mind was racing. I detected a faint scent on him. It was a woman's perfume. It smelled expensive and floral, and it was not mine. I lay still in the dark, listening to him sleep. The image of his hand on her back burned into my memory. The photo was dated September 7th, 2024, the same night he was supposedly at a business dinner. At 3 in the morning, I knew I could not just lie there. I slipped out of bed and went to our home office. It was a small room that Graham rarely used. I closed the door, turned on the desk lamp, and opened my laptop. I searched for Deanna Cole, forensic accountant, Austin. Her professional website was the top result. Her qualifications were extensive. She had 15 years of experience investigating financial fraud for law firms and private clients. She used to work for a major accounting firm in New York. She was clearly the real deal. My stomach twisted as I stared at the screen. Why was a financial crimes investigator looking into my husband? What was this all about? And why did she send me pictures? My mind raced, replaying the last 6 months. Graham had not been himself. It was not one specific incident, but many small changes. He was traveling more for work. He came home late, always blaming the office. He started taking his calls in another room. A quiet distance had formed between us. It felt like even when he was beside me, he was a million miles away. I had convinced myself it was just work stress. But now I had to wonder if I was simply telling myself a convenient lie. The garage door rattled open at 9 the next morning. I was in the kitchen, hiding behind the Sunday newspaper. Graham walked in, already dressed for golf, in a polo shirt and khaki pants. He gave me a quick kiss, poured the coffee, and took a granola bar. My tea time is at 10 o'clock, he said. I'm playing with Johnson from the investment group. I will be home by 3. That is great, honey, I answered, my voice sounding cheerful and fake. I hope you have fun. He gave my shoulder a light squeeze and left. I waited until the sound of his car vanished down the street. Then I grabbed my phone and texted Diana. Can we speak? I need to see you. She replied immediately. Meet me at the coffee shop on South Lamar, 11 o'clock. Please come alone. The place she picked was Cosmic Coffee, a popular Austin spot with local art and very strong coffee. When I arrived, Diana was at a small table in a quiet corner. She watched me with a cautious look as I walked toward her. Thank you for agreeing to meet, I said as I sat down. Of course, she replied. I was not certain you would call me. I almost did not, I admitted with a shaky breath. Where did you get those photos? She answered right away. I investigate financial fraud. Your husband's company surfaced during a separate investigation. I recognized your name. I saw him with that woman a few times, and it did not look like business. I felt you deserved to know the truth. Who is she? I asked softly. Diana held up a tablet and angled the screen for me to see. It showed a professional profile. Her name is Natasha Mercer. She is 29, a junior partner at your husband's firm. She joined the company 2 years ago, Diana explained. They hired her as an analyst and she was promoted last year. I could only stare at her photo. She was beautiful with a polished and confident look. She was exactly the type of woman Graham would admire. They are colleagues, I said, my voice hollow. It might be nothing. Diana swiped the screen. July 2024, she said. They both went to a conference in San Antonio. They stayed in the same hotel, on the same floor, and checked in just 20 minutes apart. She swiped again. August 2024. He told you he was working late 3 nights that week. I have security footage of them getting into the same car. She swiped one last time. September. They were seen at the Four Seasons Hotel on 2 different occasions. The air felt heavy and I could barely breathe. Lillian, Diana said gently, I'm very sorry, but this is not about business. I leaned back, my hands trembling. Why are you helping me? We don't even know each other. She paused. Let's just say I have been in your situation. I believe a woman should have all the facts before she makes a decision that will change her life. Her voice suggested a painful past that I knew not to ask about. So what should I do? I asked. Let me help you look into this quietly, she offered. We can gather all the information before you confront him. Bank records, emails, everything. I hesitated. The whole thing felt like a bad dream. Just yesterday, my life was completely normal. Now I was plotting with a stranger against my own husband. All right, I finally said. But there is one thing I have to do myself first. The drive home was a complete blur. I went into our home office and logged into our joint bank account. Nothing looked wrong. I saw the mortgage, the bills, and grocery charges. Then I tried to open my personal trust fund account. It was an inheritance from my grandmother with a balance of $850,000. Graham always insisted we should let it grow while he managed it. This time, a message popped up. Access denied. Please contact your financial institution. My heart began to pound. I tried again and got the same result. I immediately called the bank's customer service. My name is Lillian Grant. I cannot access my account, ending in 4739. Please hold, Mrs. Hayes. I heard the sound of a keyboard clicking. It seems your account requires in-person verification due to some recent transactions. Could you come to our branch on Monday morning? The agent asked. What transactions? I demanded. I'm sorry, I am not able to give you those details over the phone. We can review everything with you when you arrive. I hung up the phone with a shaky hand. Why would I be locked out of my own money? Graham always handled our finances. He was so much better at it than I was. But the account was in my name. Diana's card was on the desk. This was about more than just an affair. I did not sleep at all that Sunday. By Monday morning, I felt sick to my stomach. I put on a navy blazer, an outfit that made me look more confident than I felt. I drove to the bank on Congress Avenue with my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I walked into the imposing building at, say, exactly 9 o'clock and gave the receptionist my name. She smiled, made a quick call, and a woman in her 50s with a kind face came out to meet me. She was wearing a smart gray suit. Mrs. Hayes, I am Patricia Miller, the branch manager. Thank you for coming in. Please, this way. Her office was small but neat. It had family pictures, a large plant, and the quiet hum of an air conditioner. She invited me to sit down and then pulled up my file on her screen. So, she began, in a gentle voice, we put a hold on your online access because of some unusual activity. It is a standard security step we take. She typed for a moment. Let me bring up your trust fund history. I leaned in, my heart hammering in my chest. The screen filled with a long list of transactions. Every single one was a withdrawal. This is what caught our eye, Patricia said, scrolling. For the past 9 months, a steady stream of transfers has been leaving this account. They were all authorized, so no fraud alerts were sent. But the sheer number of them made our system flag it for a review. Authorized by whom? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She pointed to the screen. In December of 2023, $8,500 went to Hayes Portfolio Management. In January of 2024, $7,200 went to HM Capital. In February of 2024, $9,800 went to Hayes Properties. The list kept going March, April, May, all the way through September. The total amount withdrawn was $67,500. I stared at the screen as the numbers blurred together. I did not approve any of these, I said. Patricia's professional expression softened with concern. Our records show they were all processed with a power of attorney you signed in 2018. What? I was speechless. No, that is wrong. I signed a document in 2018, but Graham said it was only to let him manage our investments more easily. It was a specific kind. It only gave him permission to move money between investment accounts, not to take it out. Patricia paused, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a file. This is the document we have, she said, pushing it toward me. It was a general power of attorney. I scanned the dense legal writing on the first page. Then I saw it on the second page, my own signature at the bottom. It was my handwriting, perfect down to the last loop. But I had no memory of signing this document. I looked at the first page again. This is a general power of attorney. That is incorrect. I only signed a limited one. A grave look came over Patricia's face. Mrs. Hayes? This document was certified with an official notary seal. This has been active for 6 years, the banker said, tapping a signature at the bottom of the page. The notary public is Natasha Mercer. Her Texas commission number is 87392. It felt like all the air was stolen from my lungs. That's his co-worker, I whispered. She's the woman from the pictures. Patricia gently pushed the file closed. You may need some time to process this. No, I said, my back straightening. I want copies of everything, every single transaction and every document. Of course, she replied, and then she paused. Should I help you file a fraud claim? I considered her question for a second. Reporting the fraud would freeze his account, and Graham would know I was onto his secret. Not yet, I told her. I have to see the whole picture first. By the time I got to my car, my entire body was shaking. I sat there with the folder in my lap, staring at the final number, $67,500. Every penny was gone. He had drained it slowly over the last 9 months. The withdrawals were small enough to avoid suspicion, but they were all part of a cold, deliberate plan. He was stealing from me throughout our entire relationship. My phone buzzed with a text from Graham. Good morning, my love. My client meeting is running over. You should go get yourself some lunch. I just stared at his message. It was so ordinary, so casual, as if he hadn't just taken $67,000 from me. This was so much bigger than just an affair. My hands were shaking when I called Diana's number. She picked up on the very first ring. It is way more than an affair, I said, my voice cracking. He stole money from me, $67,000. Tell me where you are right now. I am at the Wells Fargo in downtown. Stay right there. Do not call him. Do not do anything at all. I will be there in 10 minutes. Then the line went dead. I stayed in my car, clutching that folder, feeling the full weight of our 8 years together come crashing down on me. I had given that man my everything. He had my trust, my love, my future, and my savings, and the entire thing had been a lie. A notification appeared on my phone. It was from Graham's mom, checking if we were still on for dinner Friday night. I swiped it away. I felt like I did not even know the man I was living with. Maybe I never had. 10 minutes later, a silver Honda pulled in beside me. Diana got out, came over to my car, and tapped on the glass. I hit the unlock button, and she slid into the passenger seat. Show me everything, she commanded. I handed the folder to her. She examined the documents, and her expression grew colder with every page she turned. She froze when she saw the power of attorney form. Natasha Mercer, she muttered. She's a notary, but I am willing to bet her license is completely fake. How did he pull this off? He must have swapped the documents, I explained. The one I signed gave him very little power. He must have put in fake pages and had his mistress sign off on it. Diana looked up at me, her eyes serious. Lillian, there is something I need to tell you before this goes on. I held my breath. There is a strong possibility that this is not the first time he has done something like this, she said. And you are likely not his only victim. Her words just hung in the air like a cold fog. What do you mean? She shut the folder and turned completely towards me. I mean, Graham Hayes has a pattern, and if we want to stop him, we need to find the other women. Diana's apartment was in East Austin. The neighborhood had many small homes and apartment buildings, with coffee shops and food trucks on every block. Her place was cozy with one bedroom, a small kitchen, and a living room barely big enough for a sofa and a table. But it was not the size of her apartment that caught my attention when I stepped inside. It was the wall. A giant corkboard took up an entire wall of her living room. It was covered in documents, pictures, and charts. Red yarn connected different pieces of information. It looked like a crime board from a television show, but this was not make-believe. This was my actual life. Please have a seat, Diana said, pointing to her couch. But before we start, I need your word that you will hear me out completely before you say anything. I gave a slow nod, my mouth completely dry. Okay? She grabbed another file from her coffee table and passed it to me. This is Natasha Mercer. She is 29 years old and a junior partner at Hayes Capital since 2022. She paused for effect. But there is more to her story. I opened up the file. The first document inside was a marriage certificate. It was from Clark County, Nevada, dated June 14th, 2012. The names listed on the certificate were Graham Michael Hayes and Natasha Ann Sullivan. I stared at their names, but my brain could not make sense of what I was seeing. He was married to her. That is correct, Diana said. She leaned over and flipped to the next page in the file. It was a divorce decree, and they were officially divorced in October of 2015. I looked at her, totally lost. He told me that I was the only woman he had ever truly loved. He swore to me that he had never been married. Technically, he was not lying. Their divorce was final a full year before you met him. But then she pulled out her phone, swiped a couple of times, and turned the screen to me. It showed dozens of Instagram photos of Graham and Natasha at dinner, at a bar, and together on a sunny beach. They never actually separated, Diana said quietly. The divorce was just a legal document. They have been working together this entire time. A wave of nausea hit me. Why? I whispered. Why fake a divorce? Because it is much easier to pull off a scam when your targets believe you two are not connected. Diana got up and went to the corkboard. She pointed to an area labeled victims. I have already identified 3 other women. He used the very same strategy with each and every one of them. She indicated the first column. Victim number 1, early 2016 in Denver, Colorado. a professional woman in her early 30s. Graham stayed with her for 8 months, talked her into funding a new business, took $90,000, and then he vanished. What is her name? I had to ask. Diana's jaw tightened and she looked away. I can share that with you later. But believe me, she is a real person with a deeply personal reason to see him punished for his actions. I could see her hands were trembling slightly as she moved to the next section, but I did not push her for more. The way she avoided my gaze told me this was far more personal than she was admitting. She pointed to the next column. Victim number 2, Jessica Moore, from 2018, in Phoenix, Arizona. A 30-year-old marketing director. Graham used the same trick. A fake investment, phony documents, and $82,000 disappeared. Then she moved on. Victim number 3, Rachel Torres, from 2020 in Houston, Texas. A 33-year-old doctor. He took $115,000 from her. She did file a police report, but by then, Graham was already here in Austin. I got to my feet, my legs unsteady, and moved closer to the board. It was covered with dates, city maps, and photos of Graham with all the women. In each photograph, they looked so blissful, holding his hand, appearing like the ideal couple. So I am the fourth one, I said, my voice empty of all emotion. Correct. It seems that every 2 years, he picks a new city, finds a new target, takes her money, and then moves on with Natasha. I turned to look at her. How did you learn all of this? Diana folded her arms across her chest. I'm extremely good at my job, and I have my own motives for looking into men like Graham. Her tone suggested a different story, one she was not yet willing to share. But I chose not to press her. Not for now. Why did he pick me? I asked. What was so special about me? You were his perfect victim profile, Diana stated. You are successful, independent, financially secure in your early 30s, and likely thinking about marriage and a family. My thoughts raced back to the architecture conference where we first met. I was 24, celebrating my first major project, and filled with so much hope. He was incredibly charming, so confident, and he made me feel like I was the most fascinating person in the world. He told me he wanted to marry me, have a family, and build our whole lives together. It was all a performance, I whispered. From the very beginning. Yes. I fell back onto the sofa, my hands shaking. 8 years. I had wasted 8 years of my life on a man who saw me as nothing but a financial opportunity, a mark. That is all I ever was to him. Lillian, Diana said, coming to sit beside me, this is much bigger than the city police. We are dealing with a case of interstate fraud that involves victims across multiple states. We have to call the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI? I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. I need a moment to process this. We are talking about my husband, about my entire life. I know, she said, her tone softening. But you have to consider the other women. You have to consider who his next victim could be. I shut my eyes. She was right and I knew it, but exposing my marriage, making it a federal investigation, felt like stepping off a cliff. Let me just get through tonight, I said. I will call you with my decision in the morning. Diana agreed. Okay, but Lillian, you must be so careful tonight. Do not let him see that you know anything. I will not. The drive home was a complete blur. The city lights smeared past my window. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Graham's car was already home. I stood at the kitchen window watching him, chopping vegetables and humming a little song. He looked so normal, like the man I believed I had married. Soon I would have to walk through that door. I would have to smile and ask how his day was, and he would feed me another lie. Every single day for 8 years had been a lie. How much longer could I live this charade? By Tuesday morning, I had made up my mind. I waited until Graham left for his supposed early client meeting. Then I dialed Diana's number. She picked up on the very first ring. Set up the meeting with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I said. I'm ready to do it. After a short pause, she asked, Are you absolutely sure about this? Yes. I drew a long breath. I can't stop thinking about Rachel, Jessica, and that first woman in Denver. If I don't speak up, he will just move on to hurt someone else. All right, Diana said quietly. I will make the call. Are you free this afternoon? Yes. Get to the Federal Bureau of Investigation field office by 2 o'clock. I'll send you the address. The office was an unremarkable building on the north side of Austin, all concrete and dark windows. I parked in the visitor space that Tuesday afternoon. I presented my driver's license to the guard at the front desk. An agent escorted me to a conference room on the third floor. Diana was already seated next to a man in his early 40s. He wore a nice suit, had dark hair, and a weary expression that suggested nothing could ever surprise him. Mrs. Grant, he said, rising to shake my hand. I am Special Agent Michael Torres, Financial Crimes Unit. Thank you for being here. I shook his hand and sat. My hands were damp with sweat. Miss Cole has given me a summary of the events, Agent Torres said, opening a file. But I really need to hear the entire story directly from you. Please start from the very beginning. And so I told him all of it. The pictures Diana had shown me, the $67,500 that had disappeared from my inheritance, the fraudulent legal document that Natasha Mercer had notarized, the undeniable pattern of victims stretching from Denver to Phoenix, Houston, and Austin, the secret marriage to Natasha, the fake divorce that came after, the social media pictures that proved they were together the whole time. Agent Torres simply listened, taking notes with a neutral expression. When I was done, he sat back in his chair. Miss Cole informed me that she has been providing us with tips about your husband's firm for the last 18 months. My head snapped toward Diana. Is that true? 18 months? You've been investigating him for that long? Diana's face became tight. I will tell you everything later. Agent Torres has to focus on the facts right now. Agent Torres leafed through some documents in his folder. Mrs. Grant, we opened a file on Hayes Capital Advisors in the middle of 2023. 3 different clients filed complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission claiming their investment earnings had vanished. Your husband settled with them privately each time. So the complaints were dropped. We thought he was buying their silence, but we had no proof. He pushed a single sheet of paper across the table to me. Your account, combined with the victim pattern Miss Cole uncovered, gives us what we need for a federal search warrant. I stared at the document. You are going to search his office. It was set for 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. Torres's voice remained calm and detached. He explained that I had to act as if everything was completely normal until then. He asked if I could handle that. I thought about our life, about making dinner and sleeping next to him, pretending to be ignorant. I told him yes, I could manage it. Wednesday was the most difficult day of my life. I went to my job, sat in meetings, and answered my emails. When I arrived home, Graham was in the kitchen holding a glass of wine, cooking pasta. He smiled. Hello, my love. How was your day? It was fine, I replied in a cheerful voice as I set my purse on the counter, just incredibly busy. He walked over and kissed me. You seem a little tense. Is anything wrong? I said, no, it is just a big deadline at work. He responded, you really need to learn how to unwind. He poured a glass of wine for me. I love you, he said. I forced myself to smile. I love you too. The words felt like lead in my mouth. Graham wanted to be close that night. I simply went through the motions, feeling cold and detached, my mind a million miles away. He fell asleep almost instantly, his arm draped over me. I lay awake, staring into the blackness, listening to the sound of his steady breathing. I kept wondering who this person sleeping beside me really was. Thursday morning was overcast and chilly. Graham headed to his office at 8:30, exactly like always, kissing my forehead on his way out. I gave it 10 minutes, then I sent a text to Torres. He is at the office. At 9 o'clock on the dot, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Mrs. Grant, this is Torres. We are executing the warrant as we speak. Your husband will likely call you. It is crucial that you remain calm. He added, act surprised. Okay. I sat on our couch, my hands shaking as I watched the clock. 9:15, 9:20, 9:25. At 9:30 the phone rang. It was Graham. I took a deep, slow breath and answered. Lillian. His voice was high and frantic, so different from his usual calm and confident tone. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is here. They are in my office, taking everything. The computers, the client files, even my personal phone. The place is crawling with agents. What? I asked, making my voice sound shocked. Why? What is happening? I do not know. They said it has to do with an old client, Thompson, from that investment fund. They are blowing this way out of proportion. My attorney is on his way. This is all just a terrible mistake. Are you all right? I'm fine. Do not worry about me. This is a huge misunderstanding. It will all be cleared up in a few days. Okay, I said softly. Just come home as soon as you can. He hung up. I set my phone down, but my hands would not stop trembling. It had started. Graham came home that evening in a rage, pacing our living room like a caged tiger. His tie was loosened, his hair was a mess, and his face was red with an anger he was failing to control. They embarrassed me in front of my entire staff, he said, his voice tight. A dozen agents marched in, as if I were some kind of common criminal. They shoved everything into boxes. They made my employees wait outside while they searched. What were they looking for? I asked, keeping my voice soft and worried. Some old client is claiming I mishandled his account. It is ridiculous. The man is just bitter that he lost money when the market dipped. He knew the risks. I watched him lie with such ease, his expression looking honest and certain even now. A cold knot formed in the pit of my stomach. I hope this all gets resolved quickly, I said. It will be, he replied, raking a hand through his disordered hair. My lawyer assured me they have nothing on me. This will all blow over within a week. Then he pulled me in for a hug, holding me tightly. I'm just so sorry you are being put through this. I simply closed my eyes. It is okay. But it was not okay at all. Late that night, long after Graham had fallen into a deep sleep, my phone vibrated on the bedside table. It was a text message from a private number. The accountants are at work. Early findings confirm your husband's company is a Ponzi scheme. We have found at least 40 victims so far. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning at 9. Come alone, tell no one. Torres. I stared at the text message, reading it 3 times as my heart pounded in my chest. 40 victims. This was so much larger than just me. It was bigger than the 4 other women Diana had found. Graham had been running a Ponzi scheme for years. I deleted the text, set the phone back down, and laid back next to the man I had been married to for 8 years. The man I never really knew. I arrived at the Federal Bureau of Investigation office at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. My hands were still unsteady from the night before. I had barely slept a wink after reading that text from Torres about the scheme, about the 40 victims, and the true extent of Graham's crimes, which were so much worse than I could have imagined. Agent Torres showed me into the same conference room. Diana was already sitting at the table. Her face was pale and her eyes were red and puffy as if she had been up all night crying. Mrs. Grant, Torres said, gesturing for me to take a seat. Our forensics unit found something in your husband's office papers. I believe this is something you should see. He slid a plain folder across the table to me. My hands were shaking as I reached for it. Inside was a single medical invoice. The paper felt heavy and official. It was from the Phoenix Men's Health Clinic, dated May 17th, 2013. The procedure listed was a vasectomy, and the patient was Graham Michael Hayes. His birth date was redacted with black ink. The total was $850, paid by a visa ending in 4729. I stared at the document as the words blurred, and my world began to shrink. Does your husband have any current health problems we should know about? Torres asked. His tone was gentle but firm. No, I managed to say. My own voice sounded strange and far away. He's in perfect health. He has always been in perfect health. Why do you ask? This is a receipt from a clinic in Phoenix. It is for a vasectomy that was performed in May of 2013. The name, birth date, and social security number all match your husband's. The billing address is for an apartment he rented in Phoenix during that time. I looked from the paper to the agent's face, feeling a crushing weight on my chest. That is impossible. We have been trying for a baby for years, since 2018. He would not do that. He could not. Diana spoke with a soft, sad voice. Lillian, I found this while going through his old financial records. A credit card payment led me straight to this medical file. I am so sorry. It must be a mistake, I insisted, my voice rising. It could be a different Graham Hayes. Maybe his identity was stolen. Torres just shook his head slowly. The social security number and the address are a perfect match. We confirmed everything with the clinic. It is your husband. He had this done 3 years before you met him. The next few moments are a complete blur. Torres kept talking about finances, deception, and other evidence, but I could not hear him. A loud buzzing filled my ears, like I was underwater. Graham had a vasectomy in 2013. That was 3 full years before we met at that architecture conference in Houston. It was 3 years before he told me he wanted to build a life with me, raise a family, and grow old together. My mind spun, replaying the last 8 years. Every memory was suddenly tainted with a new and terrible pain. Every moment felt like another lie. In 2018, just 2 years after our wedding, I suggested seeing a fertility specialist. We had been trying for a year, tracking my ovulation with no success. Graham simply kissed my forehead and said, "Let's just give it more time, sweetheart. Do not put so much pressure on yourself. Stress can really interfere with things." I just agreed. I trusted him completely. I thought he was being kind. One evening, Graham came home with a sheet of paper. It was a lab report for a sperm analysis. He looked so defeated. It showed he had a low sperm count. He claimed the doctor said it was caused by stress and not to worry. We just needed to keep trying. I believed him. I hugged him and said it would be okay. We would get through it together. A knot of guilt began to form in my stomach, and I wondered if I was the one with the problem. Then, in 2022, 6 years after we were married, I suggested we try in vitro fertilization. We had the money, we had options. Some of my friends had done it. Graham just frowned. In vitro is so expensive and it's so hard on your body, Lil. Let's just keep trying naturally. We are not that old. There is still plenty of time. So I let it go. I trusted his judgment about what was best for us. In 2024, 8 years into our marriage, I turned 32 in June. My own doctor gently mentioned that a woman's fertility starts to decline after 35. If we wanted to start a family, we needed to be serious about it. I brought it up to Graham over dinner. Maybe it is time we finally see a specialist just to get checked out. He smiled and reached for my hand across the table. Soon, I promise. As soon as this big work project is over, I want to focus all my energy on our family, without all this stress. It was always soon, always after one more thing, always another excuse. And I believed every single one. "Mrs. Grant." I blinked and saw Torres looking at me. His expression was professional, but his eyes were full of sympathy. My voice was tight when I spoke. "The lab report. He showed me a test result 4 years ago. It supposedly showed he had a low sperm count." Diana leaned forward. "Do you still have that report?" My voice was empty. "I save all of our important documents. It should be in the file cabinet at home." Torres gave a sharp, decisive nod. "Can you get it for us today? Our lab needs to see it." I suspect it may have been forged. By 1 in the afternoon, I was standing alone in our house. Graham had texted to say he was with his lawyer again and would be home late. I did not bother to answer. I walked straight into our home office, the room he claimed to work in, and pulled open the filing cabinet. Everything was neatly organized, exactly how I kept it. I was the one who always kept it organized. I found a yellow folder labeled Medical Graham. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Phoenix Fertility Center Semen Analysis. Graham Hayes. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. Sperm count, 40 million per milliliter, marked as low. The normal range was listed as 40 to 300 million. The doctor's name was Michael Stevens, and the date was March 15th, 2020. I stared at the official looking text and the tidy signature. Then I pulled out my phone and searched for the Phoenix Fertility Center. The search returned nothing. I searched again, adding the state of Arizona. Still nothing. I tried the phone number printed on the report. The number you have dialed is not in service, the recording said. I drove back to the Federal Bureau of Investigation building with the report tucked inside a plastic sleeve. My hands felt like they did not belong to me as I held the steering wheel, and my mind was a total blank. Torres met me at the door and walked me straight to the forensics lab. It was a sterile white room on the second floor, filled with computers and equipment. A woman who looked to be in her 50s, with short gray hair and a lab coat, took the document from me. She scanned it, then placed it into a machine that bathed it in infrared light. I sat in a hard plastic chair and waited. After about 30 minutes, she finally turned from her computer screen. "This is a fake," she stated, her voice flat and professional. The template was a stock medical form downloaded from the internet. She explained it was filled out on a home computer and printed on a standard inkjet printer. She enlarged the document on her monitor for me to see. "Do you see this here?" she asked, pointing at the screen. "The doctor's signature is a scanned image. It was copied and pasted onto the document." She then typed something into a database. "And the Phoenix Fertility Center does not exist. It never has. There is no record of it with the Arizona Medical Board, no business license, absolutely nothing." Torres then looked me right in the eyes. "Your husband fabricated this document to deceive you. He did it so you would not give up hope, so you would keep trying for something that was impossible." I collapsed back into my chair, my legs suddenly weak. We were back in the conference room when Diana handed me a bottle of water. "Breathe," she urged gently. "Just try to breathe." But I felt like I was drowning. "8 years," I whispered. "For 8 years, I thought we were building a family together." I had blamed my own body every single month when a pregnancy test came back negative. I was so sure it was my fault, my age, or my stress. My voice cracked. He had a vasectomy before I even knew him. He never wanted to have children with me. He was lying from the very beginning. Diana put a comforting hand on my arm. "I know this is devastating. I am so deeply sorry." I looked at Torres, my eyes blurry with tears. "Why? Why would he do all of this? Why marry me if he never wanted a family?" Torres's expression was grim. "Because children create complications, Mrs. Grant," he said. "They mean child support, custody battles, permanent records, and DNA. A man like your husband wants to avoid attachments. He prefers a clean exit." A clean exit, as if our marriage was just a business arrangement he could walk away from when it was no longer convenient. I thought of all the times I cried alone in the bathroom after yet another negative test. I thought of how I blamed myself, my body, and my own anxiety. I carried that guilt for years, believing that I was failing him, that I was the reason we could not have a child. And the entire time, it was all a lie. Every word he said, every promise he made was built on a foundation of pure deceit. As Torres escorted me to my car, the sun was setting, casting long dark shadows across the parking lot. The sky was a gorgeous mix of orange and pink, but it felt so wrong in the nightmare my life had become. "Mrs. Grant," he said softly, "there is one more thing, but I wanted to give you a moment first." I faced him, feeling hollow and spent. What else could there possibly be? He paused. "It concerns Diana, and why she really started investigating your husband." I could not go home. The thought of facing Graham and acting normal was impossible. Not now. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at my phone. Then I began to text. Graham's reply was immediate. "At Rebecca's tonight. Need some space." "Okay, love. Feel better. I love you." He sent a red heart. It once brought me joy, but now it was just another lie. I put the car in drive and headed east. Diana opened her door before I knocked. "I thought I might see you tonight," she said gently. I stepped inside. Her investigation wall was still up. with its photos, notes, and strings. It looked darker now, more menacing. I collapsed onto her couch. I do not recognize myself anymore, my voice sounded hollow. My whole life has been a lie. Diana returned with 2 hot mugs of tea. She sat across from me, her expression unreadable. I can imagine what you are feeling. Can you? I looked right at her. Agent Torres said you had something else to tell me. She placed her mug on the table. Her hands shook slightly. I have been trying to find the right way to say this. There is just no good way. I told her after my day, just say it. She took a slow, deep breath. You know, I told you I investigated Graham for 18 months? That was not the whole truth. I have been investigating him for nearly 8 years. I could only stare. 8 years. That is the length of our marriage. She said quietly, I know. A terrible cold feeling began to spread in my chest. How could you know how long we have been married? Because I started watching Graham in 2016, right after he did to me what he is doing to you. The room felt like it was spinning. What do you mean he did it to you? Diana went to the window, her back to me. Lillian, I was not honest. We did not just happen to meet at that conference. We did, but I already knew exactly who you were. I stood up. What are you saying? Please sit down, let me explain. I was frozen where I stood. Diana turned to me again. Back in 2016, I lived in Denver. I was 25, just out of college, a forensic accountant. She paused. I met Graham Hayes at a company function. He was charming and successful, my dream man. We were together for 8 months. He proposed. I said yes. He did all that to you too, I whispered. He did. Then he took $90,000 of my inheritance and disappeared. Diana's voice was firm now. I refused to let it go. I used my accounting skills to find him and his pattern. He was in Phoenix in 2018, then Houston in 2020, before coming to Austin. She looked directly at me. I spent 6 years building a case, finding records, and talking to his other victims, but I could not go to the Federal Bureau of Investigation without absolute proof of his crimes across state lines. One woman's story is not persuasive. They see it as a personal problem, but 4 women from 4 states all telling the same story, that is a federal case. I finally had it all in 2023. That is when I called the agent Torres. She looked at me with regret. When I found he married you, I desperately wanted to warn you, but my evidence was not strong enough. I had to wait and build my case. Our meeting at the domain, I said, the sickening truth hitting me. You planned that? Yes, she confessed. I made sure it happened. I felt sick. You were just using me. In the beginning, yes, you were part of my plan. Her voice cracked. But then I got to know you. I saw you were just like me. Trusting and in love, and your world was about to fall apart. I could not let him do that again. So you lied to me. My voice rose. Every single person in my life has been lying to me. Diana's eyes started to tear up. I know, and I'm so very sorry. But Lillian, everything I found out is true. The affair, the stolen money, the vasectomy, it is all real. I may have set it up, but the facts are solid, and there is something else. I stood and grabbed my purse. I cannot handle this. I do not trust anyone right now. I walked toward the door. Lillian, please wait, Diana said, and I stopped. Tomorrow, Agent Torres needs both of us there. They have found things we never even knew about. I did not look back at her. What more could there possibly be? I'm not sure, she replied quietly, but it is extremely serious. Torres has called me 3 times. He says it is urgent we see this before Graham's lawyers find out. I stood frozen, my hand on the doorknob. What time? 9 in the morning? I gave a quick nod and left. I found a cheap motel off Interstate 35 with a broken neon sign. I paid cash for a room smelling of old smoke. I lay on the bed, still dressed. My phone buzzed. It was Graham. Hope Rebecca is taking care of you. Missing you. I put my phone face down and stared at the stained ceiling. 8 years with Graham. For those same 8 years, Diana was hunting him. Everyone had lied. Everyone had used me. I shut my eyes tightly. Tomorrow, Torres would reveal what else he had found. Tomorrow, I would face Diana again, the woman who faked a friendship to save me. Tomorrow, I would learn how deep this nightmare really was. But for tonight, alone in this awful motel room, I finally allowed myself to cry. I did not sleep at all. I just lay on the bedspread in my clothes. I stared at the ceiling until the morning light came through the cheap curtains. At 8:30, I drove back to the Federal Bureau of Investigation building. My hands were steady on the wheel. The anger was gone. Now there was just a cold, empty feeling. Torres met me in the lobby. Mrs. Grant, thanks for coming back. You said you had new information. I do, I said as he led me to the elevator. Miss Cole is already upstairs waiting. My stomach tightened. I was not ready to see her. I had not forgiven her, but I got in the elevator with Torres. Diana was standing by the conference room window. She looked up as I entered. Her face was pale and her eyes were red and tired. She had not slept either, I realized. Lillian, please. I held up a hand to stop her. Let us just hear what Agent Torres has to say. She nodded and stepped back. Torres shut the door and gestured for us to sit. He pulled several papers from a large folder and put them on the table. In the last 48 hours, my team has gone through everything from Hayes Capital Advisors. He paused. What we found is much worse than we imagined. Your husband was running a Ponzi scheme. I stared at him, unable to speak. A Ponzi scheme? Yes, since 2021, he has defrauded 43 investors out of almost $4.7 million. The amount seemed unreal. Torres pushed a spreadsheet across the table to me. It showed a list of names, dates, and amounts. Hayes Capital promised clients returns of 12 to 18% from real estate, but he never invested anything. Torres explained. He was paying off early investors with money from new ones. A classic fraud. I scanned the list of people he tricked. It was filled with retirees and small business owners. I saw a teacher and a nurse, people who gave Graham their life savings. The scheme began to collapse in mid 2024, Torres continued. More money was going out than coming in. So your husband used money from his romance scams to keep it going. Diana said, the $90,000 from me, and cash from his other victims. He funneled it all into Hayes Capital. Correct, Torres said. The scams were just fast cash to stop the Ponzi scheme from collapsing. I felt completely ill. What about Natasha? I asked. She was his equal partner. She handled client communications, made fake reports, and forged signatures. My team found emails between them going back to 2021. They talked about shell companies and how to stop clients from withdrawing funds. Torres then gave me a printed email from Graham to Natasha from September 8th, 2024. It said, the Thompson Group is suspicious. I need $500,000 to quiet them. Can we get the rest from Lillian's trust? I had to read it again. My entire life was being discussed as if it were numbers on a spreadsheet. I whispered, how much more was he planning to steal? Torres looked at me with pity. Their emails reveal a scheme to take the rest of your trust, about $783,000. The room began to feel unsteady, nearly $800,000. That was every cent my grandmother left for me. It was everything I had saved for us. Diana asked, so what do we do now? Torres answered, we are filing federal charges for several counts of fraud. If convicted, your husband faces 40 years or more in prison. Miss Mercer could receive 30 years. 40 years? Graham would be 78 when he got out. What about all the people he tricked? I asked. Will they see their money again? We're freezing all his assets, which includes offshore accounts and properties. Torres added, anything recovered will be used for restitution. But to be honest, in situations like this, victims are fortunate if they get back 30 to 50% of what they lost. I thought of the teacher and the nurse from his list of victims. They could never recover from a loss like that. 43 people, I said quietly, and the four of us. That means he ruined 47 families. Yes, Diana said softly. Lillian, I am so deeply sorry. I should have told you the truth from the very start. I faced her. She appeared so drained and frail. She looked just as broken as I was. You manipulated me, I said, looking her straight in the eye. I know. You used me as bait to finally trap him. I realize that, she replied, her voice shaking, and I can't express how sorry I am. But everything we found, the other woman, the theft, the entire scheme, it was all real. I never lied to you about the facts, just about how I learned them. I was quiet for a long time before I finally answered. You spent 7 years of your life hunting him. You put your own life on hold because you wouldn't let him escape. I did, she whispered. You located all his other victims. You're the one who involved the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I am. You saved me, I said finally. It was not how I ever wanted to be saved. But you did it. Tears started to form in Diana's eyes. I went to her and wrapped my arms around her. She clung to me, trembling. I whispered, I'm still so furious. But you were right. We need to see this through together. Agent Torres cleared his throat. Mrs. Grant, we have one final request. I released Diana and dried my own tears. What is it? We need your help to record a confession. He explained that, without a confession, Graham's lawyers might claim it was only a failed business deal. We must prove he had the intent to defraud them. What do you need me to do? I asked. Torres slid open a drawer and pulled out a small black jewelry box. Inside was a lovely silver necklace. This contains a recording device. You are going to invite your husband to dinner at a quiet public place, he instructed. You must wear the necklace. Your mission is to make him talk about the stolen funds and the con. Our agents will be seated nearby. The moment he confesses, we will move in and arrest him. I looked at the pendant. You want me to wear a wire? Yes, and you must behave as if absolutely nothing is wrong. I glanced at Diana, who gave me a supportive nod. I will help you prepare. We can figure out what to say. You are not facing this alone. I turned back to Agent Torres. How soon does this need to take place? The sooner the better, he replied, before his attorney learns what we know. Sometime in the next week would be ideal. I picked up the substantial silver necklace. Okay, I said. I'll do it. The drive home felt like I was heading to my own funeral. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I had to force myself to breathe. The necklace in my purse felt like it weighed a ton. In just 6 days, I would have to wear it. In 6 days, I would need to sit across from my husband and tape him admitting to his crimes. But first, I had to get through tonight. I had to face him and pretend our entire life was not a lie. The light changed to green and I continued driving. When I arrived at our house, Graham's car was in the driveway. I could see him through the window moving in the kitchen as if it were just another day. He seemed so perfectly ordinary. He did not look like someone who had stolen $5 million. He did not resemble a person who had shattered 47 lives. I killed the engine and sat in the car for a moment, my heart hammering inside my chest. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Diana. You've got this. Just act like you're exhausted and stressed. Let him pamper you. I replied with a simple okay. Then I inhaled deeply, stepped out of the car, and went inside. Graham was in his office staring at his computer. The instant he saw me, his face shifted to an expression of worry and relief. If I did not know the truth, I might have mistaken it for love. Lillian, he said, standing to hug me, where were you? I was sick with worry. I think I called you 10 times. I allowed him to hold me, though every part of me wanted to shrink away. He was wearing the cologne from our first date. That smell used to make me feel secure. Now it made me feel ill. I was at Rebecca's, I lied against his shoulder. I just needed a little space. The business with the Federal Bureau of Investigation really frightened me. He drew back to hold my arms, searching my face. I know, darling, I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but it's all going to be okay. My lawyer has already talked to them. They have nothing against me. Are you certain? I asked, allowing my voice to tremble just a bit. It all felt so serious. It is just one unhappy client, Graham answered, his voice shifting to the slick, confident tone he used for investors. A guy named Thompson. He lost some money and wants to put the blame on me. He made a complaint, so the government has to investigate. It is just a formality. My attorney expects the whole case to be dismissed in a few weeks. Thompson? That was the name from the email agent Torres showed me. The one where Graham wrote that he needed $500,000 to silence the Thompson group. I managed to nod. Oh, that is a relief. Exactly, he said with a smile, squeezing my shoulders. I did not want to bother you with the details, but trust me, everything is handled. I give you my word. I looked directly into his eyes, and for the first time I saw the monster lurking there. He sounded so convincing and honest. 8 years ago, I would have believed every single word. Even now, if I had not seen the evidence, I might have been fooled. He was a true master of his game. Okay, I whispered, I believe you. The words tasted like poison in my mouth. Graham insisted on making dinner. He prepared pasta with garlic bread and opened a good bottle of wine. He moved about the kitchen with no worries at all, humming along to some of his favorite jazz tunes. I just sat there, watching the precise way he minced the garlic. I watched him sample the sauce, add a little more seasoning, and then pour wine into the pan with a flourish. He turned and caught me watching. What is it? He asked, smiling. Oh, it's nothing, I said. I was just thinking about how lucky I am. His face softened. My love, I am the lucky one? He came around the kitchen island and bent down to kiss me. I kissed him back but felt totally empty inside like a machine. He did not appear to notice anything. You have been so understanding with me, he said, softly moving a strand of hair from my face. With all the pressure from work and the long nights, I know I have not been a great husband. You were never my husband, I thought. You were just an actor in a role. It is fine, I said instead. I know work has been crazy. Well, I plan to make it up to you. He returned to the stove to stir the pasta. Let's have a proper date this weekend. Just the two of us. Somewhere special. My heart began to pound. You mean like going out to a restaurant? Saturday night, he confirmed, smiling at me. How about Uchi? I know that's your favorite. It seems like it's been forever since we went. I was speechless, my mind was racing. He was handing me the perfect chance on a silver platter. This was the best case scenario. It was exactly what the agents had hoped for. Uchi, I echoed, trying to sound happy and surprised. That sounds lovely. Great, I will make a reservation for 7:30. We can get dressed up, have some sake, and order way too much sushi. He plated the pasta and placed it in front of me with a bit of a show. It will be like old times. But there were no old times. It was all a performance from the very start. Despite that, I managed to smile. I cannot wait. After dinner, Graham put on a basketball game. I said I had to reply to some work emails and went to our bedroom. I closed the door, sat on the bed, and messaged Diana. He asked me to dinner. Uchi, this Saturday at 7:30. It was his idea. Her response was immediate. Perfect, Torres will be thrilled. Now we have 6 days to prepare you. How are you doing? I stared at her text for a moment. I'm not sure. This is much harder than I imagined, watching him lie right to my face. Diana replied, I know, but you're doing wonderfully. It will be over in 6 days. I hoped she was right because 6 days felt like an eternity. I raised our chat, washed my face, and went back downstairs. Graham was on the sofa with a beer, completely absorbed in the game. What is the score? I asked as I sat down beside him. We are up by 12. He wrapped his arm around my shoulders, holding me tightly. This feels good. Just you and me. All the stress is gone. I leaned my head against his shoulder because that is what the old me would have done, but deep inside I was screaming without making a sound. That night I stared into the darkness long after Graham had fallen asleep. His arm felt heavy, like an anchor holding me down as he slept. The red glow of the clock read 2:47 in the morning. In only 6 days I was going to meet him at Uchi restaurant. A hidden microphone would capture everything he said. In 6 days, federal agents would take him away in handcuffs. But for now, I was his prisoner. I would have to wake up and pretend. I would have to smile when he smiled and laugh when he laughed. I had to behave as if I had no idea what kind of monster he really was. Just 6 more days. That is 144 hours. I could get through that. I had survived worse. I closed my eyes and made a silent vow about my future. After Graham was arrested, after the whole world knew the truth, I would never let another person make me feel so helpless again. 6 days until my life was my own again. 6 days to a new beginning. I could do this. I absolutely had to. On Sunday morning, I drove to the Federal Bureau of Investigation alone. I told Graham I was having brunch with an old friend from college. It was another lie, another performance in a long series of them. I was getting quite good at it. Agent Torres was in the lobby waiting for me at 9 o'clock. He asked, "Mrs. Grant, are you prepared to start?" I was not prepared at all, but I just nodded yes. We went to a small training room that had no windows. It contained only a table, 2 chairs, and a wall of unfamiliar equipment. A woman who looked about 30 with dark hair was standing by the table, holding a small jewelry box. Agent Torres made the introduction. "This is Special Agent Lisa Morgan, our tech specialist. She will walk you through the equipment." Agent Lisa offered a smile, but it did not quite reach her serious eyes. "Mrs. Grant, this is the device that you will use Saturday night." She opened the box, showing a beautiful silver necklace on a thin chain. It was simple and elegant, the kind of thing I would normally pick for a nice dinner. But this was not just jewelry, it was a tool. "It is activated by your voice," Lisa explained, lifting it from the box. "It will record up to 8 hours of audio. The microphone is hidden right here." She indicated a tiny hole on the pendant. "This dot shows the battery level, but no one will see it unless they are looking for it." She handed it to me. The necklace felt heavier than it looked. "Go ahead and try it on," Torres said. "You need to get comfortable with how it feels." I secured the clasp around my neck. The cool metal rested against my skin right below my collarbone. "Okay," Torres said, pulling his chair up. "Let us go over what you need to say." For the next 2 hours, we practiced. He sat across from me, asking me questions and showing me how to steer the conversation without making Graham suspicious. "Start by telling him you are worried," he said. "You are concerned about your finances. You have seen some withdrawals you did not authorize. Be emotional, but do not accuse him." I nodded my head and took notes. He will try to change the topic. When he does, you have to guide him back. Say something like, "I'm just so confused," or "Can you help me make sense of this?" Let him feel like he's in control, just calming his worried wife. "What if he does not want to talk?" I asked. "What happens if he just shuts me out?" Torres leaned in closer. "If that happens, you change your tactic. You mention Natasha and the affair. A man with an ego like his cannot resist. He will feel the need to explain himself if he thinks he has fooled someone." "What exactly does he need to admit to?" "Three specific things," Torres replied, holding up 3 fingers. "First, that he was the one who moved the money. Second, that he faked the power of attorney document. And third, that this investment plan was a deliberate scam from the very beginning." He may not say those exact words, but he needs to confess his intent. That intent is what will make it a federal crime. My hands shook as I wrote down each point. He moved the money, he faked the document, the scam was planned. "You are capable of this," Torres said, his tone softening a little. "You have been living with him for days, pretending everything is normal. This is just one final performance. The only difference is this performance will be recorded." Later on Monday afternoon, I went to Diana's apartment. She had rearranged her living room to look like a stage, with 2 chairs set across from each other. She even printed out a fake menu from Uchi. "We are going to do a little role playing," she said. "I will be Graham. You are going to practice your questions." I do not think I am ready for this. "Yes, you are," she insisted. She sat down and placed her hands on the table. "Come on, have a seat." I sat down across from her. Diana's whole presence shifted. She sat up taller with a confident expression I recognized immediately. It was shocking how well she could mimic him. "So," she started, her voice a perfect copy of his, "how was your day at the office, sweetheart?" I just stared at her, unable to speak. "Lillian," Diana said, her voice her own again, "you need to respond. Just imagine I am actually him." I took a long, steadying breath. Work was fine, it was just a really busy day. She flashed Graham's classic smile. Excellent. I am happy this whole mess with the Federal Bureau of Investigation is not affecting you too much. Well, I began, my voice unsteady. There is something I have been meaning to ask you. And what would that be? I was checking our trust fund account last week. I noticed some big withdrawals I cannot recall making. It was about $67,000. Diana, as Graham frowned and leaned back. Right, that. That was for investments, my love. I told you about that already. You did? I do not recall signing anything for that. You signed the power of attorney for me in 2018. Do you not remember that? I paused. Agent Torres told me to be gentle, but I just wanted to yell. Diana broke character. That was very good, but when he says that, you have to push back. Act confused, not angry. I should say, but I only signed a limited power of attorney, I suggested, not a full general one. She nodded in agreement. Exactly. Maintain that same tone. Make him explain everything. Make him lie to you. We rehearsed for 3 hours straight. By the time we finished, I was emotionally drained. I had cried twice. The first time was when Diana's Graham said I was naive. The second was when she said, "You were never good with money, Lillian. That is why I took over." Graham had said those exact same words to me, words I once thought were true. "You are going to do great," Diana said, hugging me after our last practice round. "On Saturday, you are going to walk into that restaurant and bring him down. I will be just outside, waiting for you the entire time." On Tuesday morning, I scheduled an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Rebecca Lawson. I had been seeing her for a couple of years, mostly for job stress and our issues with having a baby, but I had never shared the full truth about Graham until that day. I sat in her cozy office, a room with dim lighting and a couch that had absorbed many tears. I told her everything. I told her about the affair, the stolen money, the vasectomy, the huge scam, and the wire I was going to wear in just 4 days. Dr. Lawson listened quietly, her face showing her usual calm understanding. When I was done, she asked, "Lillian, do you feel like you are betraying him?" "Yes," I admitted in a whisper, even though I knew it was not logical. "You are not the one who betrayed him. He betrayed you for 8 long years." She leaned in. "What you are doing on Saturday is not about getting even. It is about getting justice. It is for yourself and for all the other people he has hurt. What if I fail? What if he just looks at me and knows I'm lying?" "You have been putting on an act for weeks," Dr. Lawson reminded me gently. "You have been waking up next to him, having dinner with him, and acting like everything is fine. You are much stronger than you realize, and you are not facing this by yourself." I nodded, though I was not completely convinced I believed her. Graham came home on Wednesday evening, whistling a cheerful song. He kissed me on the forehead and poured us some wine. He then casually confirmed our dinner reservation at Uchi was all set. "Saturday at 7:30, just the two of us," he said with a wide smile. "I'm so excited." "Me too," I said, smiling right back. And that was the truth, because in 3 days this horrible chapter would be over. Later that night, after Graham was asleep, I just stared into the darkness. My phone lit up with a new text from Diana. Asterisk. "You have got this. We are all with you." I typed back, asterisk 3 more days. Asterisk 3 more days. She responded. Asterisk, and then you are free. I put my phone down and shut my eyes. 3 days until I could finally ask Graham why he chose to ruin my life. I had 3 days left to get ready for the performance of a lifetime. I knew I had to go through with it. I had no other choice. On Thursday morning, I called in sick to work. I could not sit through meetings about building plans when in 2 days I would be wearing a wire to dinner with my own husband. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring into a coffee I would not drink. In front of me was a list from Diana with 3 names. They were 3 women in 3 different cities, whose lives Graham Hayes ruined before he found me. I took a steadying breath and dialed the first number. A woman named Rachel Torres picked up on the second ring. "Hello?" "Hi, my name is Lillian Grant. Diana Cole thought I should call you." I do not really know how to start. The line was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, You are married to him, are you not? To Graham? Yes, I said, my voice shaking. How did you know? I asked. Diana told me he had a new target. I am just so very sorry. I shut my eyes tightly. I am sorry for what he did to you, too. Rachel's voice was firm and far away. She had told her story so many times it no longer broke her. It happened in Houston in 2020. We were together for 8 months. He proposed on my birthday. 3 months after that, he vanished with $115,000 of my savings. I went to the police. They said it was a civil matter. By the time I hired an attorney, he was gone. He stole $67,000 from me, I said quietly, and he stole 8 years of my life. Well, Rachel's voice became cold as ice. It is time to make him pay for it all. Diana said you will wear a recording device on Saturday night, she added, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation will be waiting to arrest him. That is the plan. Good. When you are sitting across from him, look right into his eyes. Think of every woman he deceived and every promise he shattered. You have to get that confession for all of us. I will, I whispered. I promise. An hour later, I was in a video call with Jessica Moore. Her face appeared on my screen. She had dark hair and piercing eyes. I could see her small Phoenix apartment behind her. She looked younger than 36, but her eyes held a deeper story. Lillian, hello? Thank you for doing this. Of course, I answered, pushing back a loose strand of hair. I have been waiting 6 years for this call. Diana told me about your plan. Jessica simply nodded. It started for me in Phoenix during 2018. I was a marketing director at a tech company and met Graham at a party. He was charming and driven, everything I thought I wanted in a man. We dated for 7 months. He promised me a life with a wedding, kids, and a house. Then he convinced me to fund his business idea. My $82,000 disappeared. And then so did he. I am so sorry. For years I blamed myself, Jessica said, her voice heavy with old pain. I needed therapy to function. I could not trust any man. Dating was out of the question. I felt so foolish and broken. You're not broken, I insisted. I know that now, but it was a long road. She looked straight at her camera. Lillian, on Saturday, when you get scared at that dinner, remember you are not just doing this for you. You are doing it for every woman he would have hurt next, she said. I will remember, I promised, and I will be there to testify at his trial, Jessica stated. Whatever you need, I'm finished with being scared. Claire Sullivan reached out to me later that afternoon. Her voice was the quietest of all, fragile and uncertain. I did not think anyone would ever believe me, she told me. I believe you. He said he loved me. He promised we would open a small consulting firm together. I gave him $58,000. It was all the money I had. Then he just vanished. He made the same promises to all of us, I said. I honestly thought I was the only one. Claire's voice began to tremble. For 4 years, I thought I was his only mistake. You are not alone anymore, I said softly, and neither am I. That evening, Diana made a group chat for the four of us and named it the Survivor's Circle. For the next 2 hours, we shared our histories. The talk moved past the money, which was a staggering sum, to the small, identical details. It was the way Graham introduced himself, the same fancy restaurants he chose, and the exact lines he repeated. I have never met anyone like you. You are different from every other woman. I can see us having a real future. He said these very words to each of us, like an actor reading a script. Rachel shared a photo of the engagement ring he bought her. Jessica posted a text from him that read, I love you more than life itself. Claire showed us a note he wrote, You are everything to me. I looked at my phone and my hands started to shake. These were not just lies. This was a performance he perfected and repeated, moving from one city to the next, from one woman to the next. I sent a message to the group. I am wearing the wire to dinner tomorrow night. I'll get his confession on tape for all of us. Rachel typed back, We are with you in spirit. Jessica wrote, You can do this. And Claire sent, I cannot thank you enough. On Friday, I went to the Federal Bureau of Investigation building for my last briefing. Agent Torres sat at the other side of a long conference table. The necklace with a hidden microphone was in a small box between us. Tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. at the Uchi restaurant in Austin. He slid a map with red circles on it toward me. We will have two agents at the bar and two more agents at a table close by. Miss Cole will be with me in a surveillance van right outside. We will be connected to you through a live audio link the whole time. What if he does not admit to anything? I asked. Torres leaned back. Oh, he will talk. Men like your husband have giant egos. Once they think they have gotten away with a crime and that their victim still loves them, they cannot resist boasting. Just succeeding is not enough for them. They need you to know how smart they were. He picked up the necklace and handed it to me. This device activates the second you put it on. We will hear everything. As soon as he confesses, we will move in. You will be perfectly safe. I took the necklace, my fist closing around the cool metal. Okay. Try to get some rest tonight, Torres said. Tomorrow is a very big day. That night, I sat next to Graham on our sofa. He was completely at ease, checking basketball highlights on his phone. Tomorrow night, he said, not looking up. Just us. I am excited about it. Me too, I managed to say. He set his phone down, wrapped his arm around my shoulders, and kissed my forehead. I love you, Lil. I squeezed my eyes shut. I love you too. That lie felt a little easier to tell each time I said it. Much later, when he was sound asleep, I stood at our window and looked down at the dark, still street. Tomorrow at Uchi, I would sit with the man I had loved for 8 years, and I would record his confession. Tomorrow, I would be the bait that would finally catch the predator. Tomorrow, Graham Hayes would finally tell me the truth, and I would use it to destroy his life. I woke at 6 in the morning and saw Graham was still sleeping. His arm was draped over his pillow. His face looked untroubled. I just watched him for a moment. This was the man I married, the man I trusted completely, the man who in 13 hours would say things that would send him to prison forever. And he had no idea. I slipped out of bed and walked to the window. The sky was turning a soft gray, with light pink streaks on the horizon. Across town, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation were getting ready. Diana was likely awake as well, reviewing the plan one last time. In 13 hours, this terrible part of my life would finally be over. By 8, Graham was awake and moving through the house like it was any other Saturday. He made coffee, hummed along with the radio, and kissed my forehead as he passed me a mug. Tonight is going to be perfect, he said with a wide smile. I cannot wait. Me too, I said, forcing a cheerful tone. He checked his phone. I have a meeting with my lawyer this afternoon. It is about that little Federal Bureau of Investigation problem. I should be done by 5. I will just meet you at the restaurant at 7. Sounds good. He kissed me again, grabbed his car keys, and walked out the front door. The house fell completely silent. My hands were shaking so much, I had to set my coffee cup down on the kitchen counter. At 10 o'clock, I drove to the office for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Inside the conference room, Torres, another agent named Lisa, and Diana were waiting. Torres asked me how I was holding up. I admitted that I was completely terrified, but I was also ready. Lisa opened a black case and showed me the necklace with the recording device. For a final check, she fastened it around my neck. Its cool metal a shock against my skin. Next, she handed me a tiny earpiece that matched my complexion. She said this was my safety line. If anything went wrong or if I felt unsafe, I just had to tap the necklace twice and they would immediately enter the restaurant. I could only nod, my words caught in my throat. Diana rose and pulled me into a long, tight embrace. She whispered that I was the bravest woman she knew, and that I was not doing this alone. I whispered back that I knew, but in that moment I felt absolutely on my own. At noon, I drove to Zilker Park and sat on a bench near the water. Families were enjoying the day on blankets in the grass. Children ran laughing, couples walked by holding hands, and people jogged past. It was a perfectly ordinary Saturday, filled with the simple joys I used to think were normal. I took out my phone and opened the note taking application. I started typing a letter that I knew I could never send. Dear Lillian, 8 years ago, you met a man you believed was perfect. You believed him when he swore he loved you. You believed him when he spoke of having a family. You believed every single thing he told you. You were not being foolish. You were not being weak. You were just being human. Today is the day you reclaim your life. That note was a reminder. Today you stop being a victim. You are much stronger than you realize. I put the phone away and turned off the ringer. I stared at the water until my breathing became calm. At 3 o'clock, a message from Graham came through. The meeting with the lawyer went great. I will see you tonight. Love you. I looked at the little red heart emoji. He was so confident, so sure that tonight was just another fancy dinner where I would accept another lie. He had no idea what was about to happen. At 4 o'clock, I was at a hair salon on South Congress. The stylist was cheerful and talkative, which filled the silence. She asked if this was for a special event while she brushed my hair. I told her it was an anniversary dinner. Oh, that is so nice. How many years? She asked. I replied, 8. Well, congratulations, she said with a warm smile in the mirror. You must be so excited. I am, I said, and it was the truth, but not for the reason she thought. By 5:30, I was back home deciding what to wear. I picked out the dark blue dress Graham had bought me 2 years ago. He often told me it made me look beautiful. I put it on, pulled up the zipper, and looked at myself in the mirror. Hidden just below my collar was a tiny recorder, disguised by a delicate gold chain. It was impossible to see unless you knew it was there. I touched it lightly. You can do this. At 6 o'clock, a text message from Diana arrived. We are all set and in position. Agents are at table 12 and at the bar. I am in the van outside with Torres. Her text was a comfort, a reminder that I was not alone. I replied, Thank you for everything. Her response was immediate. Go get him. I looked at her message, then grabbed my purse and walked out the door. By 6:45, I was in my car and my heart was racing. In less than an hour, I would confront my husband, Graham Hayes, and finally learn the truth. Then federal agents would arrest him, and my 8 year life with him would come to an end. A part of me counted down the minutes until his world came crashing down. I started the engine. My hands were not shaking, my breathing was steady. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. But as I drove toward the city, toward the man who had systematically broken me, I felt a shift. The fear was gone. I was ready. And now the truth was about to come out for everyone to see. It was Saturday evening, September 28th, 2024. At 6:45, I was on my way to downtown Austin. The steering wheel was cool under my fingers, a strange contrast to the warm night air. Driving down South Lamar Boulevard, the city lights sparkled against a sunset of purple and orange. Nora Jones was singing Come Away With Me on the radio. I used to love that song. Tonight, it felt like a cruel joke. Come away with me. I did go away with Graham 8 years ago. I gave him my complete trust, built a life with him, and dreamed of the children we might have. Tonight, I was driving to meet him while wearing a hidden microphone. The Federal Bureau of Investigation had coached me on every word I needed to say. I breathed in for a count of 4, held it for 4, and then exhaled for 4. It was a technique Dr. Lawson had taught me. She said my first instinct would be to flee, but I had to remain focused, calm, and in control. At this point, control felt like an impossible idea. At a stoplight on Barton Springs Road, I checked my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me appeared composed. Her hair and makeup were perfect. Her blue dress was elegant, but her eyes revealed the truth. They were the eyes of someone about to spring a trap on the person she loved. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Torres at 7:02. Safe arrival, all agents are in place. The recorder is on. Stay calm. You have got this. My hands trembled as I messaged back, on my way. At 7:05, I found a parking space just 2 blocks from the restaurant. I parallel parked the car on autopilot. After turning off the engine, I just sat there, watching the clock on the dashboard. The minutes ticked by slowly. It was now 7:06. In 24 minutes, I would sit across from my husband. The hidden device would record everything. I would ask him the questions the agents had prepared with me. What happened to the $67,500? Did you forge my name on that legal document? Where did all the investors' money go? I touched the small locket around my neck. It looked like a simple silver pendant, but it was a powerful recording device. Agent Torres had put it on me earlier. He told me the microphone could pick up any sound within 15 feet. His advice was to act naturally. Just let Graham talk. The more comfortable he felt, the more he would reveal. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, I can do this. I had to do it for Diana, Rachel, Jessica, Claire, and all the other women he had hurt. The sound of my phone ringing broke the silence. Diana's name appeared on the screen. I answered. Hello, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Hey, Diana's voice was soft but concerned. Are you okay? No, I admitted honestly, but I am here. That is what counts. I could hear faint street noises from her end of the line. She was nearby, part of the team. Lillian, listen to me. You are not alone in this. Torres is right here with me. I am here. We are all here for you. After tonight is over, we will make sure he faces justice. My eyes began to sting with tears, but I blinked them away. I could not afford to cry now. My makeup had to remain untouched. I needed to look like a happy wife out for an anniversary celebration. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. Diana let out a small laugh. Do not thank me yet. Wait until we have him in handcuffs. I agreed. Now go get your evidence, architect. Her little inside joke made me smile. I told her I would call her when it was over. You better, she said, then hung up. I took one final deep breath to steady myself. Then I opened my car door and stepped out into the warm Texas air. It was 7:20. I was outside Uchi on South Lamar. The restaurant was a modern glass structure glowing against the night sky. We'd been here only one other time, 2 years earlier, for our 6th anniversary. Graham had arranged it as a surprise, and I had thought it was the most romantic thing. I knew better now. Every kind gesture, every expensive gift, every I love you was just one more layer of his big, calculated lie. I walked toward the entrance, my heels making a soft clicking sound on the pavement. All around me were couples and groups of friends enjoying their evening. Hidden among the crowd were federal agents watching over me. I could not tell who they were, which was the entire plan, but just knowing they were present gave me a small bit of confidence. A hostess greeted me with a warm smile. Good evening. Do you have a reservation with us tonight? I said, yes, it is under Hayes for 7:30. Of course, Mrs. Hayes. Your husband is already here. Right this way, please. I followed her through the chic restaurant, with its clean lines and soft lighting. Graham was seated at the corner table. He stood up as I approached, looking incredibly handsome in a gray blazer. He flashed that familiar smile, the one that had charmed me 8 years ago. Wow, he said, his eyes traveling from my head to my toes. You look absolutely stunning. He leaned in to kiss my cheek, and I had to fight the urge to pull back. The scent of his expensive cologne was overpowering. Thank you, I said as I took my seat. You look very nice as well. Oh. He gave that easy, self-assured laugh that I once found so attractive. A waiter immediately came to our table with menus and poured water into our glasses. Graham ordered a bottle of sake for us to share. The premium stuff, he said with a little wink. Underneath the table, I clasped my trembling hands together in my lap. So, Graham began, leaning back in his chair without a single care in the world. He told me his lawyer had called that day. He said the whole problem with the Federal Bureau of Investigation would be resolved in a week. It was just a paperwork error, nothing to worry about. I simply nodded, keeping my face perfectly still. That sounds like wonderful news. He agreed it was. He took my hand, his thumb stroking it gently. I know you have been worried, Lil, but we will get through this. We always do. I looked into his warm, dishonest eyes, feeling the cold weight of the recorder. The waiter returned with our sake, poured our cups, and left. Graham raised his glass. I lifted my own, the cool cup trembling in my hand. To us, I said quietly. We both took a sip. Graham was already studying the menu, telling me what he wanted to eat. He had no idea what was coming. I took a deep, steady breath and prepared my first question. The trap was set. The man across from me was about to confess everything. He was going to reveal the truth about the money, the lies, and the 8 years he stole from my life. And I was ready to hear every word. Our first course arrived a little after 7:30. It was a beautiful dish of toro with yuzu and sea salt. The fish shimmered under the restaurant's soft lights. Graham picked up his chopsticks, looking like a man without a single care in the world. "This is amazing," he said after a taste. "We should do this more often. Just you and me. No work, no stress, just us." The word us felt like a knife, but I managed a small smile. "I would like that." He began a story about his golf game that morning and how he almost got a hole in one. I smiled at the right moments, playing the part of a devoted wife. Under the table, my nails dug into my palms. The recorder felt like a heavy stone on my chest, capturing every sound. Graham poured more sake, his movements smooth and confident. He did not know that federal agents sat at nearby tables, watching and waiting. By 7:50, he had talked through two more courses. I kept smiling and nodding, feeling my heart beat against the hidden device. Finally, I set down my chopsticks and folded my hands in my lap. I let a look of worry cross my face. "Graham, darling, there is something I need to ask you." He looked over, his smile never leaving his face. "Of course, my dear. What is it?" I started cautiously. "I have been a little concerned about our finances." For a split second, his smile faltered. "Concerned? About what?" I looked down at the table. "I saw the statement for the trust fund last week." My voice was soft, as if I were embarrassed to bring it up. "I noticed some withdrawals I did not understand." He reached over and patted my hand. "Oh, that was me, just moving some money for investments. You signed that power of attorney, remember? I am taking care of things." I pretended to be confused. "But I do not remember signing a general power of attorney. I thought it was only for the mortgage refinance back in 2018. Graham's jaw tightened, but he forced a laugh. "Honey, you must be mistaken. It was a general one. You signed it. The papers are at my office." I tilted my head, still playing the confused wife. "Are you certain? Because $67,500 is a very large amount of money, Graham." His hand tightened on mine, just a little too hard. "It is our money, Lillian. I am investing it for our future." The waiter delivered our next dish, but we ignored it. The clock on the wall now read 8 o'clock. I could feel the weight of my necklace, the eyes of the agents, and the pressure of 2 weeks of planning. I took another deep, calming breath. "Graham, I just need you to be honest with me." He set his sake cup down. "I am being honest. The woman in those pictures, Natasha, who is she?" His face went blank. For a brief moment, his composure cracked and his eyes turned to ice. Then the empty smile returned. "She's just a colleague. I have told you this before. Just a colleague. What are you suggesting, Lillian?" "I know about the hotel, the trips, and the photos." His smile vanished completely. "Who told you that?" "Does it really matter?" He finished his sake in one drink and poured more. By 8:15, the alcohol was making him careless. "Fine, we had an affair. It meant nothing." Real tears started to fill my eyes. "You cheated on me." "Do not act like a victim," he sneered. "You want the truth? Natasha is smarter than you. She understands business. She knows what it takes to win. And you," he laughed, "you are an architect who draws cute little houses and dreams about babies." I flinched and the pain on my face was genuine. "Then what am I to you?" I whispered. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes cold. "You were convenient, Lillian. You were lonely, you needed love, and you had money. So you used me." "I used your trust fund. Yes. Hayes Capital was sinking. Our old investors were pulling out. I needed a way to pay them. With my money. With money from your grandmother's trust. And I was about to take the rest of it." He smiled, a cruel, triumphant smile. Natasha had the documents prepared. Another $783,000 was about to disappear. My voice was almost gone. When did you come up with this plan? He let out a sharp, cold laugh. From the very beginning, Lillian, did you really think I loved you? You were a mark, a number on a page. That is all you ever were. The words hung in the air like poison. Then everything moved with professional speed. At 8:45, Special Agent Vincent Torres approached our table with two other agents. Around the room, other diners stood, revealing their badges. It was a perfectly executed FBI sting. Graham Michael Hayes, Torres said in a calm, steady voice. You are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and identity theft. The color drained from Graham's face. What? An agent stepped forward with handcuffs as Torres nodded. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Lillian, Graham's voice broke. What is going on? I stood up slowly, my legs trembling, and touched the silver necklace I wore. It is all on tape, Graham, I said quietly, every last word. His face twisted with rage. You snake! You set me up. Torres stepped between us. Mr. Hayes, do not address the witness. Witness, Graham yelled. She's my wife. Not for much longer, I whispered back. The agents pulled him to his feet and cuffed his hands. Other patrons were staring, some filming with their phones, others talking in shocked whispers. The calm, elegant atmosphere of Uchi was shattered by the reality of the law. As they led him away, Graham looked back at me. The charming smile was gone. The warmth, the kindness, the man I thought I loved for 8 years, had been an act. All I saw now was a stranger. By 8:50, I was on the sidewalk where Diana was waiting. Her expression was a mix of emotions. The moment she saw me, she wrapped me in a tight hug. I finally broke down in her arms, letting out the sobs I had held back for 2 weeks, for 8 years. I did it, I cried. I did it. Yes, you did, Diana said, her voice full of pride as she held me. It is over, Lillian. It is finally over. But as the FBI van disappeared into the warm September night, its lights flashing across the Austin skyline, I knew the truth. The mask was gone, and I had only been in love with the mask. The federal courthouse in downtown Austin felt like a cold fortress of glass and stone when I arrived on a gray October morning. Assistant United States Attorney Daniel Ross met me in a conference room on the third floor. He spread the evidence across the table like a general planning a battle. He had the recording from Uchi, bank statements for the stolen $67,500, the forged power of attorney with my signature copied from a 2018 charity donation form, and emails between Graham and Natasha discussing the plan to take another $783,000. This is one of the most solid cases I have ever seen, Ross said. He was in his early 40s, with salt and pepper hair and the calm confidence of a man who rarely lost. Your recording alone is a gift, but with the paper trail, Natasha's cooperation, and statements from other victims, we are going to put him away for a long time. I just nodded, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. A part of me wanted to feel triumphant. Another part just felt hollow. In mid-October, Graham's expensive lawyer, Marcus Webb, tried to have the Uchi recording thrown out, claiming I violated Graham's privacy. Judge Maria Delgado, a tough jurist with 30 years on the bench, denied his motion in less than 10 minutes. Mrs. Hayes was the victim of an active fraud, she announced. Under Texas law, she was fully entitled to record that conversation. The motion is denied. The day Natasha Mercer took her plea deal, I watched her through the courtroom glass. She stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, admitting her guilt to conspiracy and securities fraud. She accepted a deal for 8 years in prison in exchange for testifying against Graham. As guards led her away, our eyes met for a second. She did not look sorry, just broken. The trial began on November 18th. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the press box, and the families of his other victims sat on the benches. FBI agents were seated quietly at the back. Graham sat at the defense table wearing a nice navy suit. His face was a mask, showing no feeling, as if this was all happening to someone else. The room fell silent when I took the witness stand. Ross guided me through my testimony. I told the jury about the secret vasectomy, the 8 years of deception, and my dream of being a mother. I told them about the $67,500 he took from my grandmother, the forged document, and his affair. My voice remained steady when I told them Graham had called me a target, just another number on his list. His lawyer, Marcus Webb, was ruthless during his cross examination. He tried to portray me as a bitter wife out for revenge. He claimed my tears were just an act to trick Graham into confessing. But then Ross played the recording for the jury. They heard Graham's cold voice admit, "You were simple, you had money, you were a target." A complete silence fell over the room. I saw two jurors wiping away tears. 2 days later, Natasha took the stand. She revealed the entire scheme in great detail. 43 investors, $4.7 million stolen using fake financial records and deals for property that did not exist. Money from new investors was used to pay the older ones. She admitted to creating fake documents, setting up fake companies, and planning to take the final $783,000 from my family's trust. "We were going to take it all," she said without emotion. Graham said she would not even realize it was missing until we were long gone. Webb tried to paint her as a liar, but bank records and emails confirmed every single word she said was true. On November 22nd, the victims began sharing their stories. The first was Rachel Torres, a doctor from Houston who lost $115,000. "He stole more than my savings," she said, her voice shaking. "He stole my faith in people, my capacity to love, and the hope that someone might want me for myself, not for my money." Jessica Moore from Phoenix, who lost $82,000, spoke about how she tried to end her life after discovering Graham's betrayal. A retired teacher cried on the stand, telling everyone how his entire $200,000 pension had vanished. He would never get to retire. When it was my turn, I stood up and looked directly at Graham. I told the court, "He did not just take money, he took 8 years of my life. He took my dream of raising a family, he took my feeling of safety, but he did not take my voice. And I am using my voice right now." It took the jury only 4 hours to reach a decision. On November the 25th, the foreman read the verdict on all 22 charges: wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and identity theft. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Graham's face stayed blank, but I saw his knuckles turn white as he gripped the table. His sentencing hearing was on December 6th. Judge Delgado looked down at Graham with complete disgust. "Mr. Hayes, you are a predator. You targeted vulnerable women and ruined families. This court finds your behavior repulsive." He was given a sentence of 35 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 30 years. The judge also ordered him to repay $5.1 million. Graham remained like a statue, showing no emotion. He was led out in handcuffs without a single look back. Outside, the five of us, me, Deanna, Rachel, Jessica, and Claire, stood together while cameras flashed and reporters yelled questions. I walked to the microphone. "Graham Hayes stole our money," I said. "But the real theft was our peace of mind and our trust. We are reclaiming that, starting now. We are not his victims, we are survivors." In an hour, the video of my speech was everywhere online. That evening, at my house in Zilker, a letter was waiting in my mailbox. It came from the Travis County Jail. I knew it was Graham's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was one sheet of paper. It was a formal request for me to visit him one final time before he was transferred. I stared at the visitor request for a long time. Then I checked the box that said agree. The divorce became final on December 15th. It was done in a small windowless room that smelled of old documents and bitter coffee. Texas law requires a 60-day waiting period, which began when I filed back in late September. Judge Alvarez approved the divorce immediately. She declared it a fault-based divorce, since Graham's crimes were more than enough cause. I was given the house, the stolen funds were ordered to be returned, and I was to receive a portion of the restitution payments. That money would be recovered as the Federal Bureau of Investigation liquidated Graham's assets. I declined alimony. I wanted nothing more from him. By that time, agents had discovered his hidden bank accounts in the Cayman Islands with $1.8 million. They also took his cars, his city condo, and everything from Hayes Capital. My $67,500 was returned to my account within a few weeks. Deanna, Jessica, Rachel, and Claire, the other women he tricked, also recovered most of their money. The group of 43 investors, fooled by Graham's schemes, filed a lawsuit against his estate. Their lawyers estimated they might get back 40 to 50 cents for each dollar they lost. It was not perfect, but it was a start. I listed the Zilker house for sale the week before Christmas. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. I saw the kitchen where Graham had cooked for me while telling his lies. I saw the bedroom where I had slept beside a man I never really knew. I saw the yard where I had dreamed my future children would play. All I felt was a cold, hard dose of reality. That house was not filled with happy memories anymore, just with the ghosts of a life that was never real. It sold in only 3 days. A young couple with a new baby offered me more than my asking price, and I signed the documents right away. In early January, I relocated to a new loft in East Austin. The apartment had brick walls, steel beams, and huge windows that flooded it with winter light. It was just 10 minutes from Diana's place and 15 from my architecture firm. She came over one Saturday to help me unpack. We sat on the floor, had some wine, and I told her I was ready for a new beginning. You already have one, she said, lifting her glass. Returning to work felt like I could finally breathe again. My colleagues welcomed me back warmly, and I threw myself into a new charity project, designing a housing center for women escaping domestic abuse. The design included secure entrances, peaceful gardens, and private apartments that felt like homes, not temporary shelters. My design received an award from a local architecture association in late December. When I went up to accept it, I dedicated it to every woman who had to rebuild her life from the ground up. The applause in the room felt like a true victory. On a cool Saturday in mid-December, I had the 4 women over to my new loft for dinner. Diana, Jessica, Rachel, and Claire. We gathered in my mostly unfurnished living room. We ate Thai food from takeout containers set on the floor, and we told our true stories, not the polished versions for the courtroom, but the messy, painful truth. Jessica confessed that she spent a full year in therapy after she tried to take her own life. Rachel admitted she still feels anxious when a man pays her a compliment. Claire cried while sharing that her own mother blamed her for being deceived. Diana raised her glass of inexpensive wine. We made it through this, she said. That makes us stronger than he ever was. That was the evening we chose to make our support group official. It started as just a group text message. We called it the Survivors Trust. It was a nonprofit to help women harmed by romance scams and financial deception. Lily, Indiana, and Jessica were co-founders, and Rachel and Claire were on our advisory board. Our mission was straightforward. We aimed to provide free financial investigation services, legal help, and emotional support for women who had been financially exploited by their partners. We partnered with the National Network to End Domestic Violence. We got a small grant from a local foundation and launched a website in early January. In just 3 months, we helped 17 women in Texas recover over $400,000 in stolen funds. We showed them how to contact the police, freeze their accounts, gather evidence, and find lawyers who understood their cases. National Public Radio ran a feature story on us. Cable News Network even visited our little office in East Austin to interview all 5 of us. On television, we explained that romance fraud is a secret crisis that impacts so many people. After that, local news stations also covered our story. Donations started coming in. But even with a new home, a new cause, and a new sense of purpose, I could not shake the heavy weight of my losses. It was more than the money or the 8 years that were stolen. It was about the future I had envisioned, the children I would never have, the family portraits that would never be hung on a wall, the part of me that once believed love could be real, secure, and permanent. I kept seeing my therapist, Dr. Lawson, twice a month. During a session in late December, I finally broke down. I cried that I was not just mourning Graham, but the future he took from me. You are not mourning him, Dr. Lawson said gently, handing me a tissue. You are just grieving for the trusting person you used to be, and that is all right. She earned so much more. Now you are helping other women avoid the same pain. Those words stuck with me. For New Year's Eve, I was alone in my apartment. I heard fireworks and happy cheers from downtown. A message from Diana made my screen glow. You survived the hardest year. The next one will be amazing. I replied, I know it will be, and I meant every word. To be truly free, I had one last thing to do. On January 15th, I headed east from Austin on Highway 95. The highway cut through flat farms and prickly mesquite trees. My destination was the cold gray walls of the Bastrop prison. Graham was inside, serving his 35-year sentence. My visitor pass was in the glove compartment. I was not looking for closure or to offer forgiveness. My goal was to show him that he had not broken me. I needed him to see the powerful woman I was now, a woman who founded a nonprofit, received an award, and helped 17 other women. Then I would leave and put him out of my mind forever. I parked, passed through security, and walked into the visiting area. He was there behind the glass in an orange jumpsuit. His face was unrecognizable. It was a cold January morning as I drove east out of Austin by myself. A pale blue sky hung over the Texas farmland. My friend Diana sent 3 messages offering to come with me. She did not want me to face this alone, but this was a journey I had to make by myself. This was not about pardoning him, but showing he did not destroy me. The drive took 40 minutes. My hands were steady when I pulled up to the prison. Concrete buildings sat behind fences topped with razor wire. The place was exactly as bleak as I had pictured. It felt like a place where hope went to die. At the gate, I presented my license and approval letter. An officer verified my information and led me through a metal detector. A second guard inspected my purse for a phone or money. All I carried were my keys and my resolve. The visiting room was long with white walls and bright, unforgiving lights. A heavy sheet of plexiglass split the room in two. Phones were set up on both sides of the divider. Families were sitting at the small tables. Wives talked to their husbands while children pressed their hands against the glass. People spoke in hushed tones, keeping their emotions hidden. I sat down at table 7 and waited for him. A door groaned open and Graham entered. He looked older and was a lot skinnier. His pricey suits and self-assured grin had vanished. He was wearing a tan jumpsuit with a blank look on his face. Our eyes locked through the barrier, and for a moment neither of us moved. He picked up his phone and I picked up mine. The silence between us felt thick, making it difficult to breathe. His voice, hollow and cold, came over the line. Why are you here? I stared at him and felt a complete void. The rage, the sorrow, the affection had all disappeared. He was a stranger. I told him, I came to see who you actually are. Not the person I imagined, but the person you have always been. He just shrugged his shoulders. What do you want from me, Lillian? Because I am not going to apologize. I replied, I did not come here for an apology. Then why are you here? He questioned, leaning back in his chair. Did you just come to tell me that you won? I answered, I came to show you that you lost. His jaw tightened. You did not succeed, I said. For 8 years you tried to ruin me. You wanted me to feel worthless and controllable, and you did not succeed. He gave a quick, bitter laugh. I succeeded completely, Lillian. I got exactly what I wanted. I got your money and 8 years of your time. That sounds like a win to me. I leaned toward the glass. You held my money briefly, but I recovered every cent. I'm building a new life with my remaining years. You were not able to shatter my spirit. He smirked. And now you think you are a hero? Helping some women with a tiny nonprofit is nothing special. No, I said quietly. It gives me freedom. His expression darkened. You were always so naive, Lillian, and fragile. You only saw what you wanted because of your loneliness. That is on you, not me. I replied, maybe I was too trusting. No, but I prefer being too trusting over being someone who feels nothing at all. He retorted, feelings make you weak. They make people easy to manipulate. That is how I knew you would be easy. And that is the reason you will spend your life in a cell, I stated calmly. You think you are smart, but there is nothing inside of you. You cannot feel love or remorse or compassion for another soul. You are a hollow man. For the first time, I saw real anger in his eyes. You believe you are superior to me, he spat. You are not. You just did not get caught. I said, no, Graham. I am the one who got away from you. He hit the glass with his hand, making the other families jump. You will never escape me, Lillian. I will live in your head forever. I rose from my seat, still holding the phone. You are right, I said. I will always remember you, but not because you matter. You will be my reminder, a lesson about what I will never accept into my life again. I will think of you every time I help a woman get away from a man like you. His face contorted with fury. You are nothing without me, I replied. I was always someone, Graham. You just chose not to see it. I put the phone receiver back in its cradle. He was yelling, but his words were muffled. His face was flushed as he beat his fists on the plexiglass. I turned my back on him and started to walk away. Lillian! His voice was weak, but I could still make it out. You loved me. You know you did. I stopped at the exit and looked back one last time. He stood there with his palms flat against the glass, his face desperate. I lifted the phone for the last time. No, I said quietly, I loved the person you pretended to be. I never actually knew you. Then I placed it on the hook and left without another look. The cold January sun felt bright on my face. I sat in my car for a moment and took a slow, deep breath. My phone vibrated with a text from Diana checking on me. I smiled and typed a single word in reply. Free. I started the engine and drove away from the prison. I watched it shrink in my rearview mirror until it disappeared. Graham Hayes was just one chapter of my story, and now I was writing the conclusion. My apartment was filled with the scent of turkey and stuffing when the first person arrived for Thanksgiving at 6 o'clock. It was Diana carrying 2 bottles of wine and wearing a huge smile. You really cooked dinner, she said, looking at the candlelit table. Try not to sound so surprised, I laughed. By 6:30, the apartment was full of people. Jessica flew in from Los Angeles and brought a pumpkin pie. My younger brother Marcus arrived with his fiancée, Emma. Sarah Bennett, the attorney who assisted me in court, came with her incredible macaroni and cheese. Ben Carter, a lawyer I met back in June, showed up with flowers and a warm smile. Aaron Sullivan was also there, the man once engaged to Diana. Graham had destroyed their future together 8 years ago. They reconnected 6 months ago, and tonight he was by her side. When she glanced at him, her eyes held a calm that I had not seen in years. We gathered around the table as the sun set. Outside, the lights of East Austin began to twinkle. The turkey was a little dry, and the potatoes were not perfectly smooth. But those details did not matter. What mattered was the sound of joyful laughter and the comfort of our bond. During the meal, I got to my feet and lifted my glass. The chatter stopped. A year ago, I was not sure I would make it, I began. I honestly thought my life was over. I looked around at the faces that had helped rescue me. But I made it through. My life did not end. It was just beginning a new chapter. Graham took so much from me. He stole 8 years, $67,500, and my dream of having a family, but he could not steal this. I gestured to the friends around my table. He could not destroy this circle we built, these people, or the person I am today. So I want to thank all of you for standing by me, for believing in me, and for showing me that family is not defined by blood or marriage. It is the people who show up when everything is coming undone. Diana wiped a tear from her eye. Jessica squeezed my hand. Ben watched me with a look of silent pride. To survival, Diana said, raising her glass. To fresh starts, Aaron added. To family, Marcus finished. We all drank, and the room filled with cheerful noise, the type you only hear after conquering something designed to destroy you. When dinner was over, Diana and I carried our wine upstairs to the roof. I had strung little lights along the railing, which cast a soft glow in the crisp November evening. The Austin skyline glittered against the dark Texas sky. Do you remember that letter you got last month? Diana asked, resting against the railing. From the publishing house, I replied with a nod. They want to publish my book. That is amazing, Lil. What is amazing is telling my story in my own voice, I said. Not as a victim, but as a fighter. What are you calling it? She asked. Trust and theft. How I overcame financial abuse and reclaimed my power. That is perfect, she said. We stood in silence for a bit, watching the city sparkle far below. This year alone, we've supported 47 women, Diana said softly. And through the Survivors Fund, we have brought back $1.2 million, I added. Lillian, you are truly changing lives. We are all changing them together, I corrected her gently. This would be impossible without you or Jessica, Rachel, Claire, or any woman courageous enough to say, that happened to me too. Diana looked at me directly. Do you ever regret going after him so aggressively? I thought of the fear, the sleepless nights, and the dinner at Uchi where I wore a hidden recorder. I pictured the trial and the prison visit where I faced him with no fear at all. No, I said, not for a moment. Good, Diana replied, clinking her glass with mine. You are a genuine force. I let out a small laugh. I am just doing my best. From the apartment downstairs, I heard the wonderful sound of Ben's laughter. When I first met him at a charity gala in June, the thought of dating was terrifying. But Ben was incredibly patient and kind. He showed me a level of respect I was only beginning to feel I deserved. We took things very slowly, starting with coffee, then moving to long walks and late night talks. He knew my entire history, but never tried to fix me. He was simply my support system, time and again, letting me heal at my own pace. I was not in love with him yet, but I felt it was possible, like the first hint of warmth after a very long, cold winter. Diana gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I should probably head back down. I am sure Aaron is talking Marcus's ear off about crypto. I smiled. Go rescue my brother. She went downstairs, leaving me alone on the rooftop. The cool November air felt wonderful on my skin as the string lights twinkled above. I thought about Graham, who is serving a 35-year sentence in a federal prison 500 miles away. I almost never think about him now. There is no anger, no sadness, and not even a feeling of triumph. He just takes up no space in my mind. But tonight, under the white Texas sky, feeling the love of my chosen family downstairs, a strange emotion washed over me. I felt grateful, not for him, but for what his betrayal showed me about myself. I learned my own strength was far greater than I ever imagined. I could survive the most awful things. I could build a new life, one even more beautiful than the one I had lost. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and whispered into the night, I am free. And I really was. That kind of betrayal can either destroy you or it can forge you into someone stronger. I came to understand that the choice was always mine. When I think back, I see a woman who gave her trust and love away too quickly. The most painful betrayals often do not come from your enemies. Sometimes it is the person right beside you in bed, the one who promised you a future. The pain Graham caused me was much deeper than any stranger ever could. It was devastating because he was part of every single plan I had for the future. His deception was so much more than a simple lie. It was a direct attack on all my personal hopes. He used insecurities I did not even know I possessed. He wasted 8 years of my life on his cruel game against trusting women. I want to offer you some wisdom I learned the hard way. Please do not be the person I used to be. Look for the red flags, like financial secrecy, being isolated from your friends, or stories that do not add up. You do not need solid proof to question a situation that feels wrong in your gut. And you must never exchange your independence for what only looks like a partnership. These are the principles I live by now. First, talking openly about money is not unromantic, it is essential for a real partnership. Second, genuine trust is earned through consistent actions, not just sweet words. Third, while an open heart is a strength, caution is a necessary skill for survival. And fourth, you can absolutely rise from the ashes and become more powerful than you ever thought possible. I do not believe God gave me this hardship, but I am certain He walked with me through it. In my worst moments, when I felt I could not continue, I found a resilience I never knew I had. I believe that inner strength is a gift from a higher power. If my story can prevent even one woman from signing a paper she does not comprehend, from ignoring her intuition, or from becoming trapped in a web of lies, then my 8 years of pain had a greater purpose. You are never responsible for someone else's lies, but you are responsible for your own path forward. Choose to survive, choose to rebuild, and choose to be free. Thank you so much for listening to my story until the very end. I would love to know your thoughts. What would you do in my shoes if you learned your partner was stealing your money and plotting a huge deception? Please let me know what you think in the comments below. If this story connected with you, please consider subscribing to the channel to see what I share next. As a quick disclaimer, this story is based on real cases of financial abuse, but some details were changed for narrative purposes. If this is a difficult topic for you, please know there are many other videos on this channel you might enjoy.